You know, it's funny. Contrary to having reviews up of every Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel game on this channel, I personally have not played the games myself. Seriously, read the descriptions of those reviews. They are written by one of my editors. However, I have grown very intrigued with this series, so I decided, you know what, I'm gonna hop in headfirst into Trails of Cold Steel and see what this series is all about. Then, a really good friend of mine basically yanked me by my collar, wagged her finger at me and pointed at these games. The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky. You see, the Legend of Heroes series spans many different arcs across many different titles, so hopping right into Cold Steel would have just been a bit odd. Think of starting a novel series on book 6 out of 10. So, in today's video, we'll be taking a look at the Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky first chapter, the game that started it all. You know, I'm gonna be a bit honest, I feel a bit awful about all this. This video was nearly 3 years in the making. I started this game in 2018, and it's only just recently that I got around to beating it. So, I am not entirely sure where to even begin with this game. But I guess I can start at the humble beginnings. It's a dark and dreary night, and we see a little girl named Estelle eagerly waiting for her father to return home from one of his missions. When he eventually does return home, he comes bearing gifts. But not that in the traditional sense. No, instead of a souvenir from his travels, with him is a young boy named Joshua. From here, he is welcomed into the family, but not without some harsh words from Estelle, and their new life together begins. From here, we fast forward a few years to see what life is currently having in store for them, and it is here we are first introduced to the concept of bracers, or I guess the best way to describe them is, well, imagine if the Boy Scouts of America were militarized. You see, bracers are a special police force of sorts that work alongside the government and the military to help with civil issues. This can be something as mundane as trying to find a cat stuck up in a tree, to clearing out monsters that are festering in certain areas, to helping with special op missions. Our duo here begins their journey into becoming full-fledged bracers. In fact, our first mission in the game is actually completing one of our exams so we can actually join the Bracers Guild as junior bracers. And from there, the world truly begins to open up to us. As soon as we're flown into the Bracers Guild, we are given our first few missions, and from here, the game does a good job of setting the world up around us. Our first mission as a bracer is a pretty simple request at a local farm, in which monsters keep attacking it, and it's in this mission, in my opinion, is what really sets the stage up for the rest of the game to come. Now you see, this isn't just some simple tutorial quest to help you get a better feel for the game. In fact, it's set up as its own mini arc in the game. Through this mission, you get a real good look into the lives of both Estelle and Joshua and the time they've spent together. It also helps create a world that feels alive, and that we are truly helping people with the struggles that they are having. And I really do like this setup, because from this one simple mission, the game just keeps getting grander and grander. And I was not kidding about the story setting itself up to be something even grander. After this mission, you get word that the airliner that your father was on, Cassius Bright, a world-renowned bracer, has been abducted by Sky Bandits. I'm gonna be honest, the entire Sky Bandits arc for most would have been an entire video game in and of itself, but this is only chapter 1 of this adventure. In this mission, we get to see firsthand the real work most bracers do, and it's honestly a really nice flow. After getting our first simple mission, we are thrown into a giant conspiracy behind the Sky Bandits incident. New characters are introduced, and the world begins to open up more and more, and it's honestly just a real treat. Now remember how I just said this entire chapter would be an entire game for most? Well, whoo boy, does this set the stage. This entire mission setup might as well just be an extended prologue for the main campaign. After rescuing the hostages and defeating the Sky Bandits, you come to find out that their dad is not among the people who were kidnapped. Did you really think the experienced Cassius Bright, one of the most renowned bracers, would let himself get taken by such petty thieves? It turns out he is on his own top-secret mission that has the entire kingdom on the line. However, Cassius leaves Estelle and Joshua with a special task. Entrusted to them is a black orbiment of unknown origins, and they are tasked with delivering it to a specialist on the other side of the country. And this is where the game continues to impress me. In order to get better work experience as bracers, Joshua comes up with the idea that they should travel the kingdom on foot instead of relying on airliners, and decide to make their way to different major cities along the way and help out with any issues they may run into. So man, this story completely shifts gears into a coming-of-age story, and let me tell you, I am all there for it. The way the story progressed really drew me in more than what I was expecting. With each new region that we explored, I was drawn in more and more on what was going to happen next, to see how in the world all of these puzzle pieces came together in this grand conspiracy the game was brewing. I wanted to see how the mayoral conspiracy in Chapter 2 tied into the conspiracy of the military and so forth. The game is able to make each chapter feel separate but still connected to its overarching plot, and while at times the story did drag on at certain parts, when it picked up, man did it really pick up. While the base story of this game is very good in its own right, the twist ending this game has elevated it to something special, and made me extremely excited to dive right into Trails in the Sky's second chapter. Honestly, the adventure through this game is worth it alone for the setup the ending causes. I do not think I've been floored by an ending like this in an incredibly long time, but of course I will avoid discussing that ending in this video, and save that for the general Trails in the Sky second chapter video. For now, let's discuss something the game does exceptionally well, and that is establishing its universe for the future of the franchise. If I were to call this game anything, and anything at all, it would be the foundation of the entire Legend of Heroes series to date. First chapter seems to have this purpose set out from the outset of creating the world in which the people inhabit and the rules that are tied to it. As you explore the different regions of the continent, you'll learn more and more about the inner workings of Liberl and the plights of the people from the many different cities that you visit. The game also does a good job of setting up the rest of the continent surrounding you. Liberl, after all, is a small country sandwiched between two giant countries that are not always seeing eye to eye with each other, and the sentiments of the people that you meet do a great job of explaining that when they discuss events in the world that predates the start of the game. You can also get some very good insight of the people around you by doing requests with the Bracer Guild. While yes, the main story is very important, sometimes it's for the best to take a break and pick up a few requests from the people in the town you're currently in. By doing these requests, you'll sometimes get some useful lore about what life is like living in the region, or what this person or group of people may have been doing to get themselves in this current situation. It's really nice to see that while you're on your important adventure, the world around you continues to turn, as everyone has their own problems to worry about. And on this topic of the world continuing to spin around you, it truly does. One of the best things about this game in my opinion is the dialogue from NPCs around town. You see, everyone has their own life events happening at the same time as the main story, and those life events tend to update as you progress the story. So say when you first enter the town, you see someone complaining about their spouse, or something not going their way, or they even comment on something important regarding the plot. Talk to them again when you've made some noticeable progress in that part of the story, say wait until it goes from daylight to sunset. Just about everyone in town will have new dialogue. That random NPC you saw at the bar earlier? Well, he'll be there to tell you he finished reading his book from earlier, and now he's going to enjoy another meal. Or that good-for-nothing husband who is always spending his day fishing. Well, now he's home and probably getting an earful from his wife. You have instances like this with just about every person in town, and these towns aren't small either. In some chapters, you'll be in big cities with dozens upon dozens of people to talk to, including the shopkeepers too. While it isn't required to keep tabs on everyone's life story, there is something interesting about going around to each and every person to see how their days are progressing, and sometimes by going out of your way to check in on someone, you may be rewarded for the effort. It's due to this that the side characters in this game truly have a life of their own, and it goes a long way to make the world around you feel so alive. While the random NPCs around town and their lives are truly impressive, none of them are as impressive as the main people who join your party. While Joshua and Estelle will be your main party members at nearly all time, you will have a colorful cast of main characters accompanying you as you adventure around Liberl. The way this game is structured is that you will generally meet a new major character in every chapter that will join your party, and said chapter will focus on building that character up. An example would be in the early game when you have both Shara and Oliver in your party. Shara takes on the role as a mentor for both Joshua and Estelle in Cassius's absence. Meanwhile, Oliver is more or less a drunken bard who joins your party against your will, and the interactions between both characters are enjoyable to watch, especially when Oliver thinks he has the ability to outdrink Shara. Another example will be when this game introduces you to the student Chloe. She joins your party as you investigate the strange incidents that are happening in Ron. She is more or less doing so due to her own personal stake in the events that are currently happening. Then you have characters like Agate, Zin, and Tita. Agate is more like the straight man of the group at all times and tries to keep everyone focused on the mission at hand, despite one's own feelings about what is happening. Although you will see sparks of a sibling bond begin to form between him and Tita, which I find absolutely adorable. You then have Zin, who is the most senior bracer in your group, and arguably the most powerful. Yet his characteristics is that of a kind and gentle older brother towards the rest of the group, and wanting to see them achieve their fullest potential. It's here that you have a great cast of characters that come together to form one giant party by the end, but honestly, by the end of it all, they feel more like one big family than a party. This also doesn't cover the amazing side characters who help progress the plot along, or the interesting villains that you meet. This game just overloads you with some really great characters that I wish I had the time to go into each and every one of them, but each person with their own portrait has a role to play in the game's story, and not once did I find someone not pulling their own weight in the narrative. It was truly something to behold. The next thing I wanted to talk about with this game was something that really hit home with me, and that was the atmosphere and presentation of a lot of the scenes. There were times in which the pace and story of the game begins to drag on a little bit, but every time it starts to do so, there was always a scene or moment that really pulls me back in. An example of this would be when we were doing a stakeout at an inn off the beaten path, and this happened right after a few blunders in our plan to move forward, so you could tell the stakes were high for this operation. So when night fell, there was just something chilling about the whole thing. I just can't put my finger on it, but I would have to say it was probably the combination of the soundtrack, art style, and writing mixed together that made the scene so memorable, and there are a lot of scenes like this in the game that truly are able to drag you in and keep you on your toes wanting to know more. I guess I'll show my hand a little bit here, but this was done even more so in second chapter, and I love it even more now looking back on first chapter. So I discussed a lot about the story and presentation of the game, and I really haven't taken much time to discuss the actual combat of Trails in the Sky. Well, there's a reason for that. I am not the biggest fan of the combat system in first chapter, but let me preface this with saying a lot of my gripes were corrected in second chapter. That said, I didn't really find myself enjoying the combat too much. When you enter into a battle, you're on a grid-based system, and from there is your typical turn-based JRPG flair. What you will be mainly focusing on in combat is the use of your arts to get the upper hand on your enemies. That said, I feel like the game is too high of a focus on spamming arts at your enemies to claim victory. By the end of the game, I just found myself constantly casting Confused and letting my enemies take themselves out. Not many monsters or bosses seem to resist status ailments, which is fine. It allows for some interesting strategies to be implemented, but to me it felt like standard combat outside of arts and crafts left a lot to be desired of. You see, your big gun attacks are tied behind crafts, which uses its own CP meter which fills up when you take damage or deal more damage. So I would have even less reason to rely on melee attacks or choose party members who didn't have the best arts or to carry their own weight in battle. This is unfortunate because this made me instantly bench party members like Tito or a Gate, and instead focusing on having Chloe for healing and Zen to be our tank. Oh well, it is what it is. It just left a lot to be desired of in the combat department. And again, thankfully, most of these issues I have are fixed in second chapter. And I guess while we're on the topic of combat, another issue I constantly was running into was a lot of balancing. You see, normally when I play a JRPG and I go through different random encounters, that's usually a good indicator of where I'm at in terms of the game. So when I start seeing I'm getting less and less experience per battle, I get the feeling that, okay, I'm currently at the right level for where I want to be in this fight. Unfortunately though, the game doesn't seem to follow that rule, because there were several times I had encountered a boss that was leagues harder than what it had every right to be. I'm talking about being able to wipe out my party in a turn or so, and I was very confused because I was like, I'm not underleveled, every monster leading up to here didn't really hurt me too much, and I can't grind for more experience, I'm only getting 1 experience a fight. So it's just a weird sense of balance that the boss monsters feel like you're not ready for them, even though the path getting to them, it felt like you were ready. To remedy this, your best bet is to always make sure your ornaments are up to date, so you have a way to try bypassing a lot of the cheeky stuff the boss may do. So is Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky first chapter. My biggest regret was taking so long to start these games, and even taking longer to actually finish this game. I am truly grateful to my amazing friend who pushed me into playing the series her way, instead of taking the short way through. It allowed me to experience the greatness that is first chapter, and because of that, I'm having an absolute blast playing second chapter, and I'm excited to finish that one and make a video on that. I doubt first chapter will go down as my favorite game in the series, as it really did have a lot of things holding it back. But what makes me appreciate first chapter the most is, again, the amount of attention to detail that was put forth in establishing the universe of The Legend of Heroes. And from what I've been told by friends, a lot of things established in this game we built upon in the next 2 Sky games, and will continue to grow as I venture through Crossbell and Cold Steel. And I for one am someone who is excited to see where this trail will lead. So seize this series as a chronicalization of my time through playing all the Legend of Heroes games. And who knows, maybe I'll be the one to review Cold Steel 4 instead of my editors this time. A truly frightening thought for the both of us. But hey, that'll do it for today's video. I seriously recommend checking out Trails in the Sky and giving first chapter a whirl. I'll have a link down in the description below as to where you can buy the game. Disclosure, it will be an affiliate Humble Bundle link. Anywho, that does it for today's video. Just like my completion of first chapter, this video was a long time coming. If you have any comments or questions for me about the game or this video, by all means leave them down in the comment section below. I would love to hear from you. Also, if you're new to my channel, finding it for the first time through this video, hey, be sure to subscribe for future reviews, commentaries, let's plays, and more. And finally, if you really love what I do here, consider becoming a patron on Patreon or a YouTube member, like these awesome people here on screen. And as always everyone, thanks for watching.